Hey everyone, welcome to day 9 of the Not Quite SuperMoms 21-day Bible study. I hope that you are doing great. I hope that you're enjoying this study. I hope that it's a blessing to you. I have conquered a hard thing in making these videos, and it may seem like, I don't know, just no big thing to you, but honestly, like, videos themselves are super hard for me to do. So I hope that it is helping you. I hope that you are enjoying them. I hope that you're able to follow along or catch up when you have time. I know how busy it is being a mom. And so I hope that you are enjoying, and I hope that you're able to follow. So today we're talking about Lot's wife, and her name is never mentioned, and yet her life became a physical monument to the truth that God expects obedience. And I can only think that if she had only known the consequences of her disobedience, that she probably would have not done it. And I think, you know, we cannot choose the consequences of our disobedience. You know, when God tells us to do something, we can't choose how it's gonna turn out if we don't obey. And so I think when it comes to Lot's wife, her life in and of itself is a reminder that we have to obey God. In everything He says, we have to obey. Don't leave any room for exception. Don't say, well, you know, if it's convenient or if it fits in my circumstances, then I'll obey. That's not obedience, and it's not true obedience. So, you know, the thing about Lot's wife is that she looked back. And I can't stress enough that it seems like such a small thing to have such an utter, permanent consequence from. Because if you have read her story, and I'm sure you did if you read the chapter, she turned into a pillar of salt. And like, when I think I wrote in there that it's almost like, to me, that reminds me of our nation's capital, and how you know, those monuments stand there to remind us of the sacrifice that people paid for our freedom, and obviously to remind us of other things in our history. And Lot's wife became a physical monument to remind everyone who ever passed the pillar of salt that used to be Lot's wife, to remind them that God means what He says. And see, we talked about that back with Eve, and I can't help but think that Lot's wife would have at least heard, especially the fact that Abraham and Lot were, you know, business partners kind of, and how she had to have heard the story of Eve. And you know, traditions were passed down through people and through telling the stories. And you know, it's kind of like for us, for Lot's wife, you know, when God told them to leave Sodom and Gomorrah and not look back, I'm sure in her mind it was like, it's no big deal. And I just heard our pastor preach about this recently, and he said, you know, the things that really tie us up, the things that cause us the most pain, are the things that we pass off and say, it's no big deal. It's okay. It's no big deal. But the truth is, it was a huge deal, and it was direct disobedience to God. And so us, like, how do we relate to Lot's wife. You know, we don't necessarily look back on our burning city today, but we still look back on things and maybe focus too much on the past when we really should be focused on what God is doing right now and what he wants to do in the future. For instance, sometimes as moms, we tend to focus on, well, before I had kids, I had so much more time. That's a big one. We all feel like that. And or maybe my marriage was better before I had kids, or it's so hard, all the bills and everything that comes along, and we focus on before. And maybe we focus on our old habits and our old lifestyle and the way that we used to be back then, or maybe some friends that we really had to let go because they weren't influencing us and pushing us towards the Lord. And yet sometimes we can get focused on, well, it used to be so much better way back when. And then even that, like sometimes we daydream and we think, if only I had done this different, or we get really tied up in regrets. I mean, that is, to me, it's kind of like a rite of passage for moms, is to live in almost constant regret about one thing or another, you know? And the truth is, I believe that what God told Lot and his wife, he's telling us today. You know, don't get focused on the past. Don't live in the past. And I know, and you know, I give this disclaimer in the chapter too, that we do need to focus on the blessings and to remind ourselves that, you know, he's been faithful in the past, he'll be faithful in the future. But that doesn't require getting tied up in the negativity of the past. Just because I can remember that God provided for us in a rough season does not mean that I linger worrying about how that rough season hurt us, or I don't get lost in that, you know. And so when we think about the things that God has done for us, we don't stay there though, you know. And that's where the quote from the chapter takes it a little bit further, and that is, if you live in constant reflection on what God used to do in your life, chances are you're gonna miss what he's trying to do here and now. And I know that's true for me too. There are tons of things that I used to be able to do before I had kids, and maybe even when my kids were smaller, I had a little more time at home. There's lots of things that I could get focused on that I was able to do, or that God was able to do through me back then. But I can't focus on that. I can't stay in that, because that's the past, and today is a new day. It's a fresh start. Yes, we have limited time. Our kids are only maybe in our homes until they're, you know, out of high school. It doesn't matter. Use what you have today. Use what's in front of you today. Don't get focused on regrets in the past. Don't look back. You know, don't let your life, because you don't know the consequences of being stuck in that time. You know, it may not turn us into a pillar of salt in the physical sense, but it may paralyze us in the spiritual sense. If we're turned back, if we're rear facing all the time, worried about how things have been and did I do it right, or again focused on how things used to be, or looking back, we miss what God is doing in the here and now, and we let ourselves be stuck in that place instead of moving forward. So my encouragement to you today, mamas, is move forward. Keep your eyes forward. Yes, take a moment to reflect on all of the blessings that God has done, because it's his proof that he will continue. He never changes, and he will continue to move in your life even as you go about your day today. But don't stay in the past. Don't stay in yesterday. Don't be worried so much about the past. Focus on the future. Focus on today, and ask God to show you what he wants you to have your eyes set on today. I hope this has been a blessing to you. Tell all your friends that it's not too late to join us. If they want to grab the book, they can always go back. I'm gonna end up uploading all of these videos to YouTube, so those will be available there too. I would love to have them join us. And tell us in the comments how God used the story of Lot's wife to speak to your heart. Have a great day, everybody.